We are turning to a difficult but necessary conversation all Canadians should be having with their loved ones. And it's one that you don't want to leave until it's too late. We're talking about advanced care directives. In other words, what you want to have happen around end-of-life care. To help us guide us through this morning, we are turning to registered nurse Jake Mossop. Good to have you on this very important topic.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they don't want to talk about this, right? It's a heavy conversation to have for many people, but it's necessary. So let's start with the basics. When I talk about advanced care directives, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so advanced care directives, also known as a living will, is a legal binding document that people can put in place to express their care wishes or what actions they want healthcare professionals to take in the event that they become unexpectedly ill or incapable of making decisions for themselves. So, Lindsey, it's really just about having your wishes respected and known by your family and healthcare professionals. As a registered nurse, I've seen countless times, like, families will arrive to the hospital, they're in distress, they're highly emotional, they're in shock, and just think of the burden that that places on you, right? To have to make those decisions. Families often argue, fight over that, so having this in place, it just makes it easier for everyone.
So what are those what-if scenarios we're referring to?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's very difficult to talk about death, dying, illness with our loved ones, but this can help us talk about what-if situations. So they're really the instances where, say, you had an unexpected illness, so think of like a stroke or a heart attack, or if you were involved in an accident, like a motor vehicle accident, and you couldn't make those decisions. But also they're really useful in scenarios where you have aging parents, older adults who have lots of chronic illnesses, or they're entering into that palliative stage of their life. And so you can use it in those scenarios as well.
So what kind of decisions are we talking about? So let's sort of play out how a conversation goes. You're having this conversation ahead of time and you say with your family member, you say, okay, if something were to happen where I can't, like an accident, for example, something were to happen, are we talking about how, if I want to be put on life support? Like, what are the examples of that?
Yeah, so let's say you have...
Or sorry, I shouldn't say put on, like taken off life support.
Yeah, so let's say you have a grandparent and they have a heart attack. Do they want CPR performed? Like, do you know the answer to that question? Because oftentimes when you go to the hospital, there's things that can be put in place, like do not resuscitate orders, which tells healthcare professionals not to do CPR. You brought up another example. If you ended up in the ICU, do you want to be intubated, put on a ventilator, on life support? So you can really break down all the levels of care when you speak to a physician or your primary healthcare provider.
And it's one thing to have the conversation with yourself and write it down, but you have to let people know, right? At the end of the day, you could have made the decisions, but not let anybody know, and then they're in the exact same boat, right?
Exactly, yeah. So the important thing is there's three groups of people you want to speak to. So your primary healthcare provider, your family, your loved one, so whether it's a spouse, your adult children, and then a lawyer or attorney to draft the document, and then keeping it somewhere that's safe and easily accessible, because like you said, it's one thing to have it, but if no one knows where it is,
exactly.
where is it?
Well, it's like talking about a will too, right? And they talk about how often you should sort of revisit the will in terms of updating it. Is the same go for this as well?
Yeah, let's talk about that, Lindsey. So you can change your mind at any given point in time. So you don't have to think that because you have an advanced care directive that it's set in stone. So what we usually recommend as healthcare professionals is that you revisit it every 3 years if you're healthy and everything is stable. The important thing to note is that when you do revisit it, make sure that you date and sign it so that people know that you looked at it. And then the other thing is if you have any sort of new health diagnosis or a change in health status, that's another important time to look at your advanced care directive and make those changes. And then again, assigning someone who's your power of attorney for health decisions. I was
going to say that,
or assigning a substitute decision maker.
And make sure to talk to them ahead of time.
Yeah, and tell them and let them know, because it's a big surprise.
Let them know, exactly. Nurse Jake, always good to have you on. Really important conversation this morning. Coming up next.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.